So MSNBC bent over backwards in an attempt to try to make Joe Biden's flip-flopping appear to be a positive thing.
Meanwhile, Joe Biden is abandoning a long-held position on abortion. In remarks last night, Biden abruptly changed his stance on the Hyde Amendment, a 4-decade-old ban on using federal funds for abortions, except in cases of rape, incest, or to save the life of a woman. That came just a day after an exclusive NBC News report from Heidi documenting Biden's record on abortion, in which the Biden campaign reaffirmed his support for the restriction. Facing a swift backlash from abortion rights activists and at least 12 of his rivals for the 2020 Democratic nomination, Biden opened with these comments to a DNC gathering last night in Atlanta.
For many years as U.S. Senator, I've supported the Hyde Amendment like many others have. But we now see so many Republican governors denying health care to millions of the most poorest and most vulnerable Americans by refusing even Medicaid expansion. I can't justify leaving millions of women without access to the care they need and the ability to exercise their constitutionally protected right. If I believe health care is a right, as I do, I can no longer support an amendment that makes that right dependent on someone's zip code.
So that is a change, Heidi, of course, from Joe Biden, beginning in 1976, when the Hyde Amendment first came to pass, and again and again and again voting to uphold the Hyde Amendment until last night. And in fact, when your reporting came out 2 days ago, it contained, again from the campaign, an affirmation of his support for the Hyde Amendment.
It was a really stunning turn of events, Willie, because in my research, I saw that Biden not only went along to get along on this vote like a lot of other senators who said, hey, we can't pass our spending bills unless we agree to this because the Republicans will never vote for it. No, Biden's record was that he forcefully and very enthusiastically supported this amendment going back to its earliest days. I called them when I saw footage of an ACLU activist who seemed to get him to change his position. I thought that's big news. I called them. They thought about it for a while. I gave them plenty of time to think about it. They got back to me and they said, no, he still supports it. And of course, you saw what happened with the reaction to that by all of the presidential candidates, by all of the women's rights groups like Emily's List, like Planned Parenthood, who said, you know what, in this context, Joe Biden, you may have supported this your entire career, but we are in a moment here that we have not faced really since the inception of Roe with the unprecedented assault on abortion rights. And I think we don't know exactly what went through Biden's head, Willie. We do know from our own reporters, intrepid reporters Mike Memoli and Mariana Sotomayor on the ground, that this really happened last minute. Even his aides, 2 to 3 hours before his speech, said that they didn't know what he was going to do. He seemed to not be reading this from the teleprompter and actually really speaking from the heart.
It's interesting, and I've said this at the beginning of Biden's campaign. People were very concerned. Wow, he's got a long history when it comes to crime, when it comes to bank regulations that's going to sneak up on him. And I've said his defense is always going to be, look, I grow. I can change my mind. It's not changing your mind from age 40 to 42. And I think he's going to have the same Teflon feeling that Trump had. I think Democrats want him so bad because they believe he can beat Trump that they're going to let him go. You know what? I changed my mind. I changed my mind. So the very thing that I think a lot of the other candidates are hoping for, that there's a lot of stuff for the last 30, 40 years going to stick, I think this is the first in-action example of how he can gracefully pivot and voters are going to give him a pass.
But does it all?
He described that as a graceful pivot. He can gracefully pivot and the voters will be okay with it. Okay, but you just made that up. Let's be clear about that. That's not like, hey, I'm making this argument and it's based off of X, Y, and Z. It's been shown in the polling numbers and so on and so forth. No, you just made that up. You pulled that out of thin air. You said, oh, I think he's going to have the same Teflon feeling as Donald Trump had. But he's already dropping in the polls. When Trump did anything, his poll numbers went up. The entire time, Trump's poll numbers went up. From the second he launched until the first debate, until the first contest, and out throughout the entire process, Trump's numbers kept going up. Joe Biden announced, and then they're still, even with keeping him out of the public eye as much as possible, he's already dropped 10 points since he announced. That is, by definition, not Teflon Don. That's the opposite. I mean, they're so transparent. It's so obvious that Donny, Deutsch, and these MSNBC hosts, they want Joe Biden to be the nominee, that he's just working backwards from his conclusion and rationalizing. And I love how he gives what his take is, and he pretends like it's the take of the Democratic voters. Just say it's your take, man. I mean, it would still be pathetic and sad that you're making that argument, but at least it would be genuine in that it is what you believe. Like, yeah, I'll give him a pass because I like him. But no, he portrays it as, oh, you know, the voters will give him a pass because they want him so bad because they think he can beat Trump, and so therefore they'll let him do stuff like this. Oh, come on, dude, come on. And I saw Nate Silver got mad about this, and he attacked Ryan Grimm because Ryan Grimm mocked Joe Biden for his flip-flop on this. And Nate Silver said something to the effect of, you know, you would think that the left would be happy that Joe Biden moved to their position. And everybody was dunking on Nate Silver because it's like, come on, how are you so dense when you're supposed to be the data guy? You're supposed to be intelligent, and you don't realize that the reason why people are upset about it is because it's totally disingenuous? Like, okay, he flipped to this position, but how do any of us know that right when he's in the general election that he won't flip back to being for the Hyde Amendment? So for those of you who don't know, the Hyde Amendment it's a federal law that you can have no federal tax dollars go to abortion. And the idea is, oh, this isn't healthcare. This is a political procedure, and federal tax dollars shouldn't go to that because some people don't agree to it. I mean, that's so strange. It's like an exemption for only that issue. Why don't I get to say, I want an exemption for Wall Street bailouts, or I want an exemption for endless war? I don't want my money killing innocent brown people overseas. Why don't I get to say that? And then they implement that into law, but they don't. There's special little snowflakes for the anti-abortion people. So Joe Biden, with a compromise with the right for the longest time, was fine with the Hyde Amendment. It was for the Hyde Amendment. He said, yeah, okay, fine. No federal tax dollars going towards abortion. So the polls in the country actually show that the Hyde Amendment is popular. A majority of voters support the Hyde Amendment, believe it or not. So, of course, I could definitely see Joe Biden flip back in the general election. See, that's the point, Nate, is that, yeah, he's flip-flopping, but we know it's disingenuous. We know it's for political reasons. We know that a candidate like Bernie Sanders, who opposed the Hyde Amendment his entire goddamn career, we know where he stands. We don't have to question where he stands. We don't have to worry about in the general election him trying to pander to the far right, and he goes, listen, I was supported it all those years, and maybe I still support it. So, I mean, how are they so dense that they don't realize this? That you don't see... This isn't like an actual change of heart. He's just responding to political pressure. Now, you could argue that's better than the alternative. That's fair. But it's still not as good as somebody who's been on the right side of this the entire time. And what's fascinating is, I guarantee you, here's my prediction. I guarantee you, on all of the issues where Joe Biden really should say, okay, you know what? I tap out. Fine, you guys are right. All the energy in the party is behind this. He's not going to do it. And he already showed that with Medicare for All. Medicare for All is one where you're not in favor of it and you're running to be the president as a Democrat in 2020. I mean, you are just utterly wasting your time. But that's one where Joe Biden's political instincts will be, no, I'm not going to be in favor of it, and I'll be okay not being in favor of it. No, you're going to get eaten alive if you're not in favor of it. But it's funny because on other issues where if Joe Biden stuck by his guns on this issue and he was like, yeah, no, I agree that abortion should be legal. I agree that it should be provided by insurance companies. I believe that state tax dollars can go towards it, but we made a compromise a long time ago, and I stand by that compromise, and I think it makes sense to have no federal tax dollars going towards it. That would have been him at least being honest about what his stance is, and it may be a storm that he could have weathered. In other words, I don't know how much his support would have dropped. I mean, it's possible that it would have dropped more than it's dropping right now, but I tend to doubt it. But with this, like, it's weird because on all the issues that he's going to flip-flop, those are the issues where he maybe could have just stood his ground and said no. But the issues he's going to refuse to flip-flop to the proper position are the issues where he's going to get eaten alive. The point I'm trying to make in a convoluted way here is his political instincts are shit. Joe Biden's political instincts are total garbage. And he's going to prove that over and over and over and over to the point where you heard them. They said, I talked to the people from their campaign just before he gave the speech, and they were saying he still supports the Hyde Amendment. And then Joe goes out there and flips and says, no, I'm not in favor of the Hyde Amendment. It must be nice working for a candidate who you don't have to worry about this stuff. Like Bernie. You know where he stands. So you don't have to worry about it. What if I say this? Is he going to come out and flip his position? Is he going to try to pander? Is he going to do this? Is he going to do that? Bernie is so principled, even when he'll walk into a minefield, even if like 90% of the public disagrees with him. To be fair, I forgot the exact numbers, but like when he said felons should be able to vote while they're in prison. Like that's a rare issue where Bernie is actually totally out of lock with the mainstream vote, like average Americans. But he was just like, yeah, well, I'm just going to tell everybody what I think, and I'm going to argue for it. And there's something that's very refreshing about that, even when you disagree with him. And, you know, with Joe Biden, he's all over the place. I don't think he really believes in anything. And I think he will continue to self-destruct as we're currently seeing right now. And all the while, the MSNBC host will be defending him. Can you imagine if Bernie Sanders did the exact same thing that Joe Biden did here? How would Donny Deutsch and how would these MSNBC hosts react? They certainly wouldn't say, oh, well, the Democratic voters are going to give him a pass, even though I just totally and utterly made this up and pulled it out of my ass. I think the Democratic voters are going to give him a pass. No, you're only saying that because you want to give him a pass. That's it. It's crystal clear. So, fuck MSNBC, fuck Joe Biden, and but it is fun watching them implode.